I've always felt that manga like Kimetsu and Jujutsu carried the spirit of the big three, while manga like Hero and Black Clover carried the body. The first two feel like the big three, while the other two look like the big three on the surface. A major factor in why the first two feel like the big three for me is the stakes and consequences. Like the big three, they have high stakes and high consequences to match. When characters face difficult opponents, they frequently put their lives on the line, and usually sustain severe injuries, sometimes even dying. The way the protagonists are constantly fighting forces much stronger than them, and rely on the help of their superiors is reminiscent of Bleach and Naruto. The Infinity Castle arc itself is very similar to big three arcs like Enies Lobby, Soul Society, and the Sasuke recovery, and I think those similarities are what make this arc so great. The final battle arc is split into two sub-arcs, the Infinity Castle arc and the Sunrise Countdown arc. Starting with Infinity Castle, there's a lot of hype before the battle begins. We are made aware that this will be the final showdown. At the start of the arc, Kaguya, the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, and Tamayo both die in an attempt to kill Muzan. The Demon Slayers all rush in after realizing that they are looking at Muzan, but are transported into his castle. This is one of the most exciting starts I've seen to a story arc. This arc has a lot of character arcs and development in battle. After sacrificing his life, Kaguya has a flashback. In the fight against Doma, Shinobu, Kanao, and Inosuke all had flashbacks that connected them to the demon, amazingly adding a personal layer to the fight. In Zenitsu's fight, Kaigaku was his sibling apprentice and had now become a demon, making it just as personal as the Doma fight. Zenitsu even develops in character and power, learning how to fight while awake and gaining a new form. In the fight against Akaza, Tanjiro saw him kill Rengoku, so this match is already personal. Sanemi, along with most of the demons, are given flashbacks that flesh them out during their battles. The fights are epic and have great strategies. Characters die, sustain heavy injuries, and break weapons. The fight against Nakime was bad though. It was too comedic for a final fight, had almost no consequences, and had an anticlimactic resolution. Here is where the arc begins to fall. When killing off a character, it is best to give that character development before they die. At this point, the characters who had arcs and could have died were Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, Kanao, Shinobu, Gyo, Muichiro, Sanemi, Mitsuri, and Gyomei. The first three, most people wouldn't have expected to die because they clearly have plot armor. Shinobu and Muichiro did die, and they had good deaths. Characters that shouldn't have died due to their lack of development are Genya and Obanai, yet Genya did die. High consequences for high stakes is good, but too many of the same exact consequences become predictable. In the Mugen Train arc, the consequence was death. In the Entertainment District, the consequence was retirement. In the Swordsmith Village, the consequence was injury. As you can see, the consequences varied up till now. The Infinity Castle managed this pretty well. Against Doma, Shinobu dies and the other two are injured. Against Kaigaku, Zenitsu is injured. Against Akaza, both are injured and Gyu's sword breaks. Against Kokushibo, Genya and Tokido die and the other two are injured. Against Nakime, all are injured. Death as a consequence became too cluttered and small. There are 12 to 13 combatants, but 3 major deaths in the arc, and 2 of them are in one fight. This is the final battle, so death as a consequence is expected, but 2 of 3 deaths coming from one battle when there were 5 different battles is disappointing, especially since one fight had no injuries at all. Possible alternatives to solve this problem is to have the Nakime fight actually be serious and maybe have Mitsuri die. Obanai could die instead if his flashback was moved to this fight. Against Akaza, Gyu could have potentially died. Against Kokushibo, only one character could die rather than 2. If 2 were to die anyway, Sanemi should die rather than Genya, because he would have a character arc and the impact would have been greater towards Genya. If the author only wants to kill 4 characters, have only Muichiro die against Kokushibo, and have someone die in the Nakime fight. So the deaths not being spread out and the Nakime fight being silly are the main problems of the Infinity Castle arc. However, the Sunrise Countdown arc has a lot more. The first is Muzan. As a character, his goal is seemingly immortality. This is very simple and uninteresting. His backstory gives a little insight into why he wants to be immortal, but unlike most demons, this isn't really sympathetic. For his combat, Muzan's fighting style is incredibly uncreative in comparison to the other demons that we've seen so far, like the Arrow, Tamari, Drums, and Spider demons. All he has are tentacle appendages with blades that he whips around. It is important for him to have creative abilities, because all the demon slayers can do is use their swordsmanship. The demon's abilities is what prevented each fight from looking like the last. The balancing of his powers are also a problem. A demon has two weaknesses, sunlight and beheading, but Muzan is given insane regenerative abilities without a drawback, so he basically can't be beheaded. Furthermore, he has 7 hearts and 5 brains, and can move them around at will. His only weakness is sunlight, making him a very unbalanced character and contributing to the disappointment of his battle. Because of this, the Demon Slayer's strategy in the fight is to stall until dawn, while his is just to kill his opponent. Because of Muzan's pouring abilities, and the only strategy available to defeat him being to stall, the fight is repetitive. Chapters 184, 185, 188, 189, 190, and 191 are all Muzan swinging his tentacle appendages while the Slayers use their forms to fight back. There are small differences in the chapters, like new fighters joining, the Demon Cat with healing, and the pillars using crimson red blades to vary the fight, but that's not enough to create a new phase. A good fight requires changes in strategies from at least one party, but in this fight the strategy was basically the same thing from start to finish. When the Demon Slayers realize how fast Muzan regenerates, their strategy is basically to survive and keep attacking. In 192, it becomes just Muzan versus Tanjiro. Tanjiro's solution from the flashback is to use all 12 forms of the sun along with the red blade. 193 and 194 are the same, with Obanai joining at the end. Throughout the fight, 4 drugs that Tamayo poisoned Muzan with ahead of time are slowly introduced, turning a demon into a human, aging, no cell splitting, and destroying the cells at weak points. All these really do is extend the fight by providing an explanation to why Muzan can't take out one opponent easily. In 195, Muzan's scars begin to appear, potentially serving as a change in strategy, but it doesn't really affect the fight. Muzan begins to run away, and Tanjiro throws swords at him. This is a nice change of strategy from both sides, but it quickly returns to the original fight. In 197, Inosuke and Zenitsu are the only ones left to fight Muzan, but like most of the fight, both sides use the exact same strategy throughout the fight, making it all blend together. In 198, Tanjiro, Mitsuri, and Obanai join. The back-to-back attacks were kinda cool, but that doesn't change the fact that the fight is basically the same as when it started. In 199, Kyu, Sanemi, Gilmei, and the others join in to finish off Muzan and pull him into the sun. Muzan turns into a baby and dies in the sun, so for about 15 chapters we had Muzan swinging his arms as the Demon Slayers attack him and rotate who fights. There were some good parts, but the fight is mostly bad. For some reason, the arc does not end here. Obanai had a flashback for character development while fighting Muzan, so when he dies along with Mitsuri and Gilmei, all 3 have good deaths. Although, succumbing to injuries after a battle ends is one of the laziest ways to kill off a character. Genya also died this way earlier. Tanjiro seems to have died, but in 201 it's revealed that Muzan had put his blood in Tanjiro and turned him into a demon that can resist sunlight. Nezuko arrives and his friends are unable to kill him, so they try to talk to him. Kano injects him with an extra drug that turns demons into humans, and in 203, Tanjiro is turned back to normal. This plot twist was extremely unnecessary. First, it does not add anything to Tanjiro as a character. If Tanjiro becoming a demon had some kind of tie into some character arc, and Muzan was just the one to push him over the edge, this would have been interesting. If it was somewhat his choice to become an antagonist, this would have been a good decision, but instead, he's turned into a mindless puppet as a lazy plot twist to extend the already dragging arc even longer. This fight is ended in 3 chapters and barely any consequences arise from it. It really has no valuable purpose. In conclusion, the arc started really good and showed a lot of promise, but the Sunrise Countdown had so many problems stacked upon each other that created a disappointing ending to a good manga.